Well, hello everybody. I'm just trying to do a voiceover here and learn as I go along. So this is another section within the national parks at the Acre, and just doing a little bit of flyby to give you an idea of the flow paths and what the fires look like before they happen. Within these materials here, they set themselves up down all of these watercourses, and this flows directly into the rainforest below it here. Now, these wild tobacco that you can see in the top of the right of the shot, they're around 20-30 feet tall, and I filmed this from a few different perspectives to try to help people to understand the destructive nature of these materials. Now, they're not allowed to be released into the environment, they're not allowed to be increasing on a property, and they're not allowed to be allowed to leave that property. That's a part of the Biosecurity Act requirements. Now with lantana, when you look down into this material, you can see the grasses that are being dispelled and gotten rid of, and the lantana's taking over the entire surface here. You'll hear government statements like Landcare say to you, well, you know, it stops erosion, or it's an erosion protection. At the end of the day, it's all dishonest and it's all misleading, and it's all, you know, spread through people for a reason. Before these materials took over these surfaces, there were other Australian materials that were growing there originally. These materials drown out everything that was there before. This stuff here is probably about 20 to 30 feet deep. When you see some of the low-level stuff I do over the top of this, and I look directly down into it, I'm trying to give you a perspective. As far as you can see along that roadway, this material continues down this embankment exactly the same as you see it in this corner section. Now, it responds to water in the most horrific way, that every time it gets 25 millimeters of water, it increases and reseeds again at about 600 plants for every single plant that's growing. So the expansion rate is absolutely massive, and because I proved that the seeds float, the seeds then traffic downstream till they find a decent area that they like, the structure of the soil, the water quality and things like that, and then they reset another infestation further downstream. That's been on government record since 2011, that they actually clocked this material at 2,000 kilometers from the original source. Now that there shows you, looking down into the material, no sunlight gets to the ground anymore, and this material destroys all subsoil life. Now, subsoil life is critical to the health of an environment. Once this material kills that subsoil life, sorry, it then degrades that land permanently, and other vegetation species cannot, you know, retake over those areas for a great deal of time after lantana's either been removed or something else has happened in that environment. Now the lantana's all the way up all those trees at about anywhere from 30 to 60 feet high, and that is why all of the fires, the fire services all said they can't understand why every single fire they fight is a critical crown fire. Now you look down inside that material, and that's 30 feet deep, and you can't see past about 18 inches into that material. You can see the amount of dry material underneath the main source. This is why lantana burns like petrol. Now I remove that lantana, and within seconds to minutes I put them on a fire and I burn it completely green like that. Look down there, you can't, no animals get past that material once it reaches this sort of infestation level. Because there's no light gets to ground, there's nothing for anything to go underneath it for, and that's the end of it. Nothing lives in it or under it once it reaches stage 2 and stage 3 progression. Now that goes for a kilometre along that road surface up that side and down into the rainforest below it in the watercourse. Sorry about the croaky throat. Now I'm trying to fly my drone here. Unfortunately my really good one got crashed, and I'm trying to fly this drone which has very poor radio reception. And it's one of the things that I supply all my own stuff. I am trying to do everything as best I can, but quality's not always perfect, because the drone itself doesn't want to hold position well, which means I'm in danger of putting it into the trees because I'm flying so close to everything else there. So it just gives you a little bit of understanding of why I'm flying like I am. Now, these materials, that I came through at that height and like that to show you how high those materials are, where when I'm flying down low you don't really get to understand how massive that other weeds are that are moving with Lantana Camara. Now, this is within a national park, which is supposed to be our heritage and our environment. And the state government records show that 2,000 kilometres was covered in the 2011 floods from Townsville to central western Queensland. Then I proved that the seeds float, and it's now accepted on that basis. Now, that's miles up that hillside continuing into the forestry, and that's why all fires turn into crown fires. Now, that ravine to the right, back up in the corner, continues way up into the hillside up there, and that's flows all the way down from the ridge line, which is nearly a kilometre from here to the top of the ridge line, and that's a consistent, continuous flow. This is just one watercourse, one ravine flowing down to the creeks below, which at another stage I'll show you there what that looks like. So this is why it's dicking around a little bit when I'm trying to land the drone and catch the drone, because it's trying to fly all over the place. Although the cameras hold pretty well, the actual drone itself's wobbling everywhere, and you got like that. I had to duck to miss it because the wind caught it and pushed it. Whereas the other drone is much more expensive, that got crashed, but it has much better position holding capabilities. So in this next one, we'll just jump across to a different spot. Okay, and the same problem is consistent throughout the entire national parks. We're talking about in Diagula National Park, around 16,000 hectares infested with these materials in exactly the same types of conditions. And that's why when the fires went through in January and February this year, they destroyed incredible amounts, 20 million hectares, and well over 1 billion animals died as a result of that. This is the headwater of the rainforest, and it's completely infested and completely overtaken by 30-foot tall lantana through this ravine. So it consistently floods that amount of seeds down through that rainforest, and eventually it'll overtake that rainforest. Remember, we made history in 2019 around October where we had 2 entire rainforests destroyed. That's history in Australia. It's never happened before. Binnaburra was destroyed. Before that, we had rainforests damaged, but the amount of these materials being allowed to be grown illegally, this is illegal for these materials to be released into the environment, but the biosecurity heads of department say that there's nothing going to ever be done about these materials because they gave up, even though it's against the law. Now, that side of that there where you see there is one tiny little piece. This is what I'm showing you back up the ravines. There's 2 ravines feed into that one pocket. You have to excuse the flying because this thing is absolutely behaving terribly, backwards and forwards and trying to go sideways. So I'm trying to keep it out of the trees, because the work I do in showing you this sort of stuff, I've actually got to get in close and personal to these materials. But for 500 metres up that gully there is all lantana continually up both sides of the gullies and down through the basin floor. Now, that's the worst environments that you can have these materials accessing water. And as I said before, every time they get 25 millimetres of water, and because it's a catchment area, they get that regularly in a rainforest environment. You start to understand that stuff in that centre shot is a massive ravine, that one. That's much bigger than the one to the left. and it is wall-to-wall lantana for about 60, 100 feet up either side of this gully, ravine, however you want to word it. You can see the amount of dead material underneath lantana. That's what creates the intense amount of heat as they burn. Now I'm going to land this in a second because I've got to change the battery. Now, when you actually see all of these materials in these environments, okay, you start to understand how the flow path comes out of the national parks, down through all of the water courses, and continues to private properties further downstream. Now this flows all the way to the bay, and then flows across the bay, island hopping until it gets to the next lot of islands, which might be Moreton Island, Stradbroke Island, Bribie Island, or in the case of Mary River and that, you end up on Fraser Island, island hopping across there. And that gives you an idea of the total destructive characteristics of this. These seeds flow across dams and then continue their way down watercourses. So you can be miles and miles, even hundreds of kilometres from the actual source that's infesting your lands. This is one of the main reasons why the councils have never been successful, and the state government at any level, of dealing with lantana, is because the training is so poor throughout the government circles that they just do not understand the flow patterns, the intensity of these materials, the worst places for them to grow. Now you get a good idea there, left and right on the sides of that view, of how far these materials go up those embankments onto either side of these ravines. When a fire comes through, that material ignites with such enormous ferocity as it burns like petrol, and it sets those leaves alight on the trees that are 30 and 40 and 60 feet tall, which then sets the leaves alight on the gum trees that are 100 feet to 200 feet tall. That's how every single fire turns into a crown fire. The intensity that comes up these watercourse ravines and then lays bare the ground beneath it, then completely sterilizes the rest of the earth. Keeping in mind that lantana supports its own kind, it does not support other types of vegetation. So it sterilizes the ground by stopping the sunlight getting to it. Then when the fires come through, it's total devastation. You can see as far up there, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of meters up that mountainside, because it gets much steeper as it goes up there. That is all Lantana Camara right across that whole basin. So by the time the fire is burning that hot, it runs up either side of the ravine onto the next ridgeline and destroys every living thing. This is why we had the fires in North Queensland around Mackay 2 years ago destroy old growth forests. Old growth trees were destroyed completely, and everything smaller than that just was incinerated and ceased to be. But it's the second wave of lantana that comes back across those bare earth infestations that is the critical change in the long term of this. So I hope you enjoy this. I hope it helps you to understand what these patterns look like. I'll do more on the seed outputs of these areas that gives you a better idea of how devastating this is all the way to Moreton Bay, and why everybody is supposed to be protected from these materials. This is all illegal, and it is so massive at 16,000 hectares of these materials. You're talking about total devastation of our future community economics and the loss of life that is coming, because these fires will increase and continue to increase exponentially. There will not be any ceasing to it until we take action and we demand the change, and we put myself into the place of running the National Capital Works program, because I'm the only one dedicated to the destruction of these materials and the only one with the knowledge. I have no equal in the world in Lantana Camara, and what these criminals are actually doing to our lands is devastating for such a massive amount of area downstream that until we deal with that, we will never stop or deal with the climate change side of these effects, because Lantana causes climate change. It's not the other way around. Those fires were not caused by climate change. They were caused by Lantana Camara and the other weeds that have been allowed to take over these lands in such massive spreads and areas. And until the public is made aware of exactly how strong, see how high that material is compared to the vehicle? You know, it's not till you get that sort of perspective of it that you start to understand these criminals who were responsible for protecting the environment actually caused all of these things to destroy so much habitat. But it's immediately removed all of the animals from these environments. No animals get through this. No animals live in it. And we accept when the UN says that if animals are displaced from their environments, they die. Yet nothing is done about this. And the expansion rates are legally being done across such massive parts of Australia in our World Heritage listed sites. These are rainforests. This is rainforest basin here. This is what all of this material has run for a kilometre to drop into. And there is no off switch to it. Until we deal with it, there is no stopping it. You can see graphically there how much fire potential that material has in that corner there. So Lantana Removal Queensland group, join that on Facebook. You'll find more information and be able to discuss these situations of the total devastation of all of the animals in these environments. You know, when you're talking about 16,000 hectares in one single national park illegally being flushed downstream into everybody else's property and destroying community-based economics, which is completely illegal, you start to understand the battle that I'm fighting here. At ground level here, I'm trying to show you there's no paths of any animals going up these areas which would have been fully functionally being moved through originally. But, you know, this is all I can do is show you some of these flow paths and show you even more devastation in the next lot of videos I show you, as well as the Google Earth stuff. I can show you the flow paths of these materials into the watercourses and then show you the devastation in private property as they flow downstream. But we're talking about billions of animals being removed from our environments and then burnt alive when these fires come through. This is what the fires look like. It's not a few leaves on the ground. Anyway, I'm Gary, 0449 986 880, Lantana Removal Queensland.com.au, and I'm doing all of this to try to bring to the attention of the people the crimes that are happening in our forests and national parks. And this is why we're being removed from those national parks, to stop people from being able to see the devastation and the cost of these materials. Anyway, I'll catch you on the next one. Please stay safe. Please do something about this and write to your local members and your premiers and prime ministers. Catch you on the next one. Bye-bye.